everyone, this is Build Series, and I'm your host, Brittany Jones-Cooper. Today, I'm sitting down with actor and activist Yara Shahidi to talk about the upcoming third season of her hit show, Grownish. Now in their junior year, we'll follow Zoey and her friends as they try to answer some of life's biggest questions about purpose, love, and identity, all before the school year is over. We're also going to switch things up today by handing most of the interview over to you, the fans, for an extended Q&A. So everyone, put your hands together for Yara Shahidi.
Thank you. Always so happy to be here.
Yes, we love having you, and I love this sort of extended format because I know people always have questions, and so it's nice that you can actually talk to them directly.
I think so many times we have such great conversations, and then when we get to audience questions, we have like 2 seconds and get half a question. So this is exciting.
I know it's honestly some of my favorite answers come out of the Q&A. So I'm happy that we can extend it today. But first, I do have my own questions for you. First, I have to say congrats on the NAACP nominations.
Thank
for you, the show, and Hallie.
Yes,
that is so phenomenal. Give it up for that, guys.
It's so exciting. You know, I think NAACP has always shown so much love to Blackish, and I'm just honored that that extends to my Grownish family too.
Yeah, it's so exciting. All right, now let's get into Grownish.
Okay.
I recently rewatched season 2 so I could be really fresh for this.
You're better than I am. I should rewatch tonight.
You lived it.
Yes, I did. I lived it and I watched it live.
Oh, there you go. See? And what I really noticed is that Zoey, you start seeing her have more and more light bulb moments, and you see her really starting to grow up. Is that what it feels like in the role? Do you feel like you're approaching her any differently coming into season 3?
Yeah. So season 1, it was like starting with a blank slate. I think what we knew of her in Blackish was that she was the oldest sibling and slightly annoyed, and they did establish that she was entrepreneurial and stuff, but you know, you really didn't know much about her, and that was a real gift moving into then Grownish and feeling like you could really establish who she was, because these are all new situations with all new people and you haven't seen her in these predicaments before. And so I think season 1 was just getting a grasp of who she is and even coming to terms with and enjoying the fact that she's faulty at best, but in all the best ways, knowing that like she is genuinely going through the experience of learning all of these hard lessons and sometimes understanding the moral of the story and sometimes totally missing it. But that's life. And so then season 2, I felt like we moved in with more of like an idea of who she is. And season 3, I think, is a similar relearning of the character, because I feel like compared to in all the seasons, this is her next biggest leap in terms of what she's doing as it pertains to growing up and how she's approaching school. There's actually an ongoing joke because almost every scene ends, or any like big scene ends with "this lands on Zoey." So it's now become a good joke in the cast. Like whenever there's a big moment just between us, they'll say like, "Oh, this lands on Zoey," and then walk away.
You mentioned there are big things happening for her, and one of the biggest things is she's starting to figure out what she's actually passionate about.
Right.
She was passionate about fashion, but maybe realized designing's not the path for her, and now she had this amazing internship and opportunity in London.
Yes.
So do we see how that sort of has impacted and changed her?
Yeah, so we meet her at the end of the summer, and so unfortunately you don't get snippets of her London experience, but it definitely is seeded into how she's approaching her junior year, and it is a really monumental thing because she's continuing to work during her junior year, and that's, I think, the first time we've actually seen her maintain a job for more than 4 hours. And so you see like how that definitely impacts the fact that she wants to be really focused. She's coming in, I think, more determined than we've ever seen her before, and I feel like she's coming back and inspired, because we end the season realizing that her boo didn't believe in her, which was just sad.
Tragic.
So tragic. I was like, Luca Hall, goodness. But, you know, you have that moment, which is devastating, and then she's trying to figure out what she's going to study, and it feels like everything's up in the air, and you really leave her on the spot where she winks at the camera and then is flying to London. And so it's nice to see like what ends up happening from that, and I feel like you really do see that as a through line throughout the season, because she's going to work. She's a working girl now.
As somebody who's a little bit older, I was excited to see that her passion and career seems to be a focus of hers, and less about the guys, because those guys are... I mean, Luca, get it together, man. It was giving me a lot of like Sex and the City burger vibes. I don't know if you remember, like he couldn't be happy for Carrie, and it's like, why can't we both like share in the happiness and the success? With that said, there is a love triangle in play.
Yeah.
She has been gone for the summer. What does she walk back into?
She walks back into everything she forgot existed back at Cal U. So, I mean, even as you see in that clip, all my homies in real life.
Look at the fellas.
I love how much Trevor and Luca serve in this photo. No one gave me the memo we weren't smiling.
They're smizing.
Yes. But, you know, she walks back into this love triangle pretty adamant that that's the last thing she's about to do. But as life happens, you can plan all you want, but some things just exist. And nonetheless, because we've established this friend group, you really can't escape any of them. There is no separation because at this point we're all friends. And I think that's something that's true to form in that you can't truly extricate somebody from their life. And after her summer of business, I think in her mind, she just assumes that, no, just like her business works, like you just make your plan, stick to it, and that's how it pans out. And so to your point, I appreciate the balance this season of really seeing her dedicated to her work without forgetting the kind of 3-year setup of these people that she's built friendships with and had relationships with. And it's been beautifully messy at times. And at the same time, I feel like you also get to see who supports her career. And that becomes a big part of who she views as a friend is the people that support her holistically. And that's a growth moment.
And when you start realizing that it's so important in your real life, you know, the friends that are supporting you. Also to point out that Ryan Destiny is joining the cast.
Love Ryan.
Can you tell us anything about her character?
I cannot tell you much except she's a brilliant film student. And so when we meet her, she's doing like a semester away. She's Spelman student, and it's super cool to have her because not only is she brilliant, but to just also continue to expand our lovely Grownish world. And she has such a unique perspective too. And so her character is somebody that Zoey gets to know well. And at the same time, they really do establish other relationships between her and the cast. So it's fun because like you see her character fully develop within 2-3 episodes.
So fast. Okay, we have some questions from Twitter.
Yes.
The first
Hello,
one,
Twitter.
Shadow War asks, how has Zoey and the other characters developed over season 3?
Well, I've talked about work before, but I think for Zoey, it's really been understanding. I think she thought walking in that being in college was adult life. And this was the season where she realized even college isn't adult life. It's the pre-step, it's the foundation before adulthood. And so in this season, you actually see her experience what adulthood entails when you don't have that safety of your net. And that her relationship with school changes throughout the season in a way that I really appreciated because I think it shows the narrative of how complex school is. I think oftentimes, even though we're living in a more non-orthodox time, I think there's such a narrative of like, you go to school, you get a career, you do this or do that. And Zoey has such a non-linear path and also just demonstrates just how equally valid each path is. And then in terms of the other characters, this season is a season that we really get to dive in to see everybody else. You know, with Zoey gone and traveling sometimes, we really get to sit with Anna and Aaron and every character, really, the twins, and everyone has great storylines, whether it's diving into Anna and her religious beliefs, which have kind of been an ongoing joke throughout the season, but I feel like college is as much a place of any to really explore what do I believe in now that my beliefs are just based on me and not even being reaffirmed by my family or the people I'm surrounded by. And so love those storylines, diving into student loans because everyone knows like FAFSA guys, sheesh. And so the fact that that affects the actual group, it feels like every season we get to be a little more grounded in everything that people are experiencing, and we get to take these characters that we've met season 1 into new situations that some are really unexpected and some are just like, well, of course they're going through that because I'm going through that.
And that's the beautiful thing about getting a third season, which I mean, a lot of shows don't get that anymore, but you've had the time to create the world and we get to know these characters. So then you can dig into these deeper issues and we actually care and we really can connect, I think, in a different way.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Looking at Deas, and they ask, which is your favorite Zoey hairstyle?
My favorite Zoey hairstyle, that's tough. Okay.
So tough.
So Tanisha, who I just consider a Zoey wizard, like she knows my character. She's done my hair from Blackish through Grownish and every other Kenya Barris project she is on. And it's literally like I will close my eyes because it's usually 6 a.m. when she's doing my hair. And then I wake up and I'm like, this is fabulous. I feel like some of my favorites would have to be this starting look, which was inspired by Beyonce's Coachella look, which was fun. We do some great braided styles, a little bit of FKA Twigs inspo in there. It's really hard to choose. We do so much.
I'm always just super envious because, like, when you look at my pictures from college, my hair did not look like that.
Well, I mean,
I'm always just like, damn, Zoey looks so good all the time.
It's funny when I'm off of set, you know, being put together professionally by people and then waking up and being like, what do I do now? Like,
fourth day with a messy bun.
For me, hey, day 4 curls are kind of where it's at, though.
I heard somebody, yeah, she applauded. Yes. Speaking of Beyonce, Edward is a Man asked, what was it like to recreate Beyonce's Coachella for Grownish?
It was so much fun. And that's really a testament to our amazing departments. Wardrobe, Michelle Cole, who was nominated for an Emmy last year. She's fabulous and has the longest track record. And again, she does Blackish and Grownish. And so that was like a testament to them because they pulled that together so quickly and was so detail oriented while still trying to figure out what makes this Grownish, what makes this Zoey, what gives everybody like their little character flavor instead of doing an exact replica. So it was really fun to pay homage and to start the season with that too.
Did you feel empowered?
Definitely.
Right?
You
like,
can't
you guys
not
are walking
in those
formation.
Boots. Although I do have to say, we were in boots with little heels in the grass. And so there are a couple scenes where you see me just getting shorter progressively because I'm sinking.
Luca Zoey asks, that's a real
I wonder what
name.
they're about to ask.
They seem like big fans. What storyline has the show not touched upon that you're hopeful that they'll get to at some point?
Oh my God, Trevor's outside.
Oh, hi, Trevor.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, he's my next interview, actually.
I love that. Okay.
So what storyline have you guys not touched upon that you would like to?
Well, to tease what's happening in this season, I think one conversation that happens throughout the season that I'm really excited about is what it actually means. You have students that you're following who are predominantly students of color, and what it means to be at this institution and really addressing the politics of the place that you are participating in daily. And so that's something that I feel like it starts with Trevor's character, that storyline, and then really expands to the entire cast examining how they relate to this institution. Because it's been an ongoing joke that's something that we've been aware of since the first episode, in which you realize that they are at a private right institution, and it is a very particular experience. And the pilot in Blackish, the first instance you see Zoey is when they're trying to shut down the predominantly black dorm. And so that's a great storyline that carries through, and I think speaks to that specific experience of when you're not in the majority.
And again, the thing I love about the show is, like you said, it's been ingrained since the beginning, you know, with him trying to make Hawkins a safe space for the black students. And, you know, so when you do get to a point where you can really tackle it, it feels super lived in.
Yeah.
We do have audience questions as well. I think Nettie has the first one.
Yes. Hello.
Hi. It's so good to see you again.
Yes.
So I know we've kind of touched upon this, but Zoey has been through so many life lessons throughout the seasons, and I was wondering which lesson has been the most influential to your own personal life?
To me, it may sound cliche, but I really appreciate how much she messes up in that, you know, at first it may feel like really comical, like of course she's doing this again, but it's so real life. And I think as I grow up with my character, it's oftentimes a lesson that I have to remind myself regularly that progress isn't linear. My assumption of myself is usually like, okay, I've learned my lesson, I'm never to make this mistake again. Yeah. And of course we want to start that way, but just living in a character in which I've had the permission to mess up consistently, and then similarly being a 19-year-old operating in the world, I feel like that's been the most valuable because I'm somebody that's I wouldn't call myself a square, but I'm definitely like a quadrilateral in that. And so I play a character who was on Adderall in her second episode, and even though those aren't necessarily lessons I could take away from, the gist of being somebody that is just as worthy of your time watching, who's just as faulty and infallible or fallible, very fallible, has been a privilege.
Thank you.
We do have another question coming from Royal Highness. They ask, how does she balance her TV and social life and still keep up with your studies? Because you are a student. I
think it takes, it doesn't take a village, it takes a small country to make this work. I'm being so honest. If it does not take a continent at the least, I have a wonderful team of people, not only on my personal team, but on the Grownish team themselves, who understand how important my school is to me, and I appreciate the fact that I'm able to have that life as my own private life and also live this public college life for people. And it really does genuinely take a ton of people who appreciate and value the same things I do to make that work, because they didn't have to.
I just think it would be so amazing to be on a university at this time, because it is an election year. And I'm interested, I know you're very focused on getting people to register to vote and use their voice. Has it been extra fun to be around other young people during a year like this where everything is so kind of heightened?
It is. A common thread has been that I don't think young people aren't engaged, and I am excited that we're moving past that conversation, because so many times it's like, how do we get young people interested in politics? I feel like at this point, it has affected so many aspects of our lives that I really don't know a young person who thinks that, like, oh, this doesn't affect me, because we've seen it firsthand. But it's been a matter of then answering the question and figuring out the answer for myself of how do we increase access to actually being in conversation with our government and with the political systems that are supposed to be in place to hold these infrastructures accountable. And it's been an exciting year of ideation, especially because this is, I think, voting is a place in which all of our separate interests come together, in which we're voting about the environment, we're voting about social inequities, everything that you could possibly think of is kind of comes together in terms of how we vote. And that's been most inspiring, because I think throughout the year we've seen many movements led by young people pertaining to different things, and this is the one platform in which we're all consistently having to come together.
Absolutely. I think on that note, we have another question. Courtney had a question about using your voice.
Yes.
Hi. So
Hey.
my question was actually very similar to Brittany's, but I was wondering what advice you would have for people for young people especially, who are just starting to find their voices and navigating like PWI spaces, figuring out how to get comfortable with being authentic in their voices,
Right.
Without not being completely not concerned with pushback, but how to rise above that.
Right, and that's something I think I deal with regularly, especially in the social media ethos, is that it's not one for conversation oftentimes. And so as young people, we're not given many spaces that we have access to in which they're genuinely meant for conversation, and people are genuinely sitting here to hear what you have to say and then constructively respond. And so part of that for me has been trying to figure out how to create those spaces. And a lot of that has really just been through friendships, of finding those spaces in with friends. The one thing that I had at home and have at home that I'm really grateful for is the space in which our dinner time conversations were literally just talking about how we felt with the world, about the world, and that's where we had our rough draft conversations. And really my piece of advice, and it may sound hypothetical, is figure out who you can have those rough draft conversations with. I feel like it's a faulty misconception that as soon as we step into the world with an opinion, it should be fully formed and backed up, because we're still figuring out who we are, and we're getting new information about how we interface with the world every single day. And I see oftentimes that need to be extremely decisive really affect our ability to fully form our opinion and be comfortable with the evolution of our voice. And so for me, it's been encouraging that conversation in friends, even if it's like, okay, hey, I'm struggling to figure out how I feel about this, is really how most of my conversations start with my friends. And usually, sometimes we get somewhere really constructive, other times we're like, okay, we have to come back to that. But that's been really beneficial, especially in this day and age in which there's something to comment on or have an opinion on every single moment.
It's a good question. I think that's something that you have to continue to work on too, like having that open dialogue and not judging people, you know, like you don't always have to agree at the end of the day.
Right, I
think
think
people have to remember.
My papa always says, my grandfather is like, you could look at somebody and say, you might be right. In your head, you could say you're probably wrong, but you can say you might be right. And that's the importance of having a constructive conversation where the goal is not to persuade somebody, but to ultimately evolve in your opinion. And I'm not saying this in that you should entertain points of view that are antithetical to your very being, but I think in terms of just everyday conversations, it's important.
That's dialogue. Ashley, you have our next question?
Hi, Yara.
Hi.
So my question is, where did you start when coming up with your 18 by 18 initiative? And what advice do you have for young people wanting to get more involved in activism?
Yeah, so with 18 by 18, it was an idea that I had in 2016 right after the election, I think because everyone had a very similar response, especially a lot of the young people I knew, in which it was kind of a feeling of being helpless and like I couldn't vote in this election. What could my vote have changed if I did? Or how do I interface with the government or any political body for that matter at this age? And so 18 by 18 was then knowing that my first election I could vote in was going to be midterms, and that midterms are not something that are often stressed to young people as something to participate in. How could I be a part of the large push to get people to participate in midterms? And that was really about finding a support system of people that really helped us flourish the idea. And again, going back to finding the people that you can talk rough drafts with, it's the same as finding your support system who can help you just clearly think of an idea. The one thing that I've appreciated from a lot of my mentors, even like Patrice Cullors and such, is like, it's okay to be specific about your cause. I think the reason that we're all put on this planet is that we have different interests, and our work would be redundant if we tried to be as broad as possible. And so even with 18 by 18 and what we're doing this year too, it's really about being like, how can we serve something so specific that isn't being served right now in terms of how we're talking about young people going out to vote? And with everyone starting out as being socially engaged, it's okay to find something that you feel like affects you personally, because I promise you it'll affect more people. And that's how we get the most efficient, most fulfilling work, because you're addressing something that you specifically can speak to rather than feeling the need to enter the conversation about broad topics.
So make sure you're registered to vote, everyone.
Yes, please.
Little important note there. Our next question comes from Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey. Hi, Yara.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask you, who is your artist of the decade on Spotify?
Who is my artist of the decade?
Such a hard one.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm trying to remember.
I do remember mine. Mine was Anderson .Paak.
That's great. If I'm being honest, I'm pretty sure it's Frank Ocean. Yeah. Oh, fun story with that though. I did my Spotify Wrapped, and I was really excited to see who I got. But then as I was doing it, I realized I have a shared family Spotify. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be all of the boys' music. I know it. Little did I know, it was all my father's music. The top artist of this year was Steely Dan for me. And I just thought that was absolutely hilarious, because here I was worried about how my brothers would affect it, and I look at my father who's been playing hours of Steely Dan.
Do you ever rock with Steely Dan?
I rock next to Steely Dan when he plays it.
Like I have my earbuds in and I'm listening to Frank Ocean. Fair.
Yes, although I feel like that's why I have such a randomly broad taste of music, and why like I low-key love Fiddler on the Roof and such, is because my parents have opposite tastes of music that can join in like certain areas. And so now I just have like the spectrum of, my friends were making fun of me because it went from like Billy Joel to Pop Smoke one day, and they're like, what is happening, Yara?
So wait, if your dad is Steely Dan, what does your mom listen to?
I mean, that's when we've been raised with Nasir. I think where our family shares a taste in music is like Damian Marley, Welcome to Jamrock, one of my favorite albums. I'm trying to think. Bob Marley is big in our house, of course. And then lots of like Kendrick, Nasir, of course. I'm trying to think who else. We listen to so much music. A lot of Sade and James Blake. Ooh. We just got the boys onto James Blake. We actually, Mommy and I were out of town working, and so the boys went to his concert and had the best time. And I don't get like FOMO a lot, but that's one of them. Yeah.
That's a vibe. That puts you in a whole space.
Yes.
I love James Blake. All right, another question from Twitter. Looking at Dias again, asks, who is your role model?
Who is my role model? Oh my goodness, I'm really lucky to have a lot. I have to say, of course, my mama, and I'm not saying that because she's in the corner of the room. I would say this regardless, because I feel like for me, we operate in this world together, which is really special to be able to operate in this industry with your family. But also, one, we're very similar humans, and it's reaffirming to be able to operate in a space in which there's somebody reminding me that I deserve to be here. And I know we have large conversations around imposter syndrome and when you share your voice, and I think the fact that this is actively demonstrated to me, how you operate in the world, understanding the value of your voice, is something that I am grateful for.
I mean, that's the single most important relationship in your life. And I think I see a lot of people who grow up having maybe mothers who weren't that supportive. And when you see somebody who does have it, it's like, you can see how good it is.
I think I get more and more thankful every year because I didn't realize that this wasn't the usual
it's a beautiful
relationship.
thing. And I think for fans of yours, it's a beautiful thing to witness, you know, seeing how close you are with your family.
It speaks to how my family operates. My parents have always stressed the importance of intergenerational support, whether you find that in your family or elsewhere, because I know not always does it come from the people that you're related to, but intentionally reaching out to generations above and below you, because there's no point in recreating the wheel, and there's so much value in those support systems and relationships.
So much to learn. Yara Shahidi BR asks, how does it feel to know that there are so many young Black women around the world that look up to her?
It's
no pressure?
Yes. It's surreal to have that level of support. And I think what I'm most excited about is not only with Grownish, but within our role as producers, being able to continue to expand who we get to see and what we get to see of ourselves on television. I'm honored to be one of many faces, especially of Black women in media, not the only face. That's possibly what excites me the most, because I get to then tell my specific story and let other people tell their specific story. And so to have supporters who follow me for genuinely being me, and through every journey from Blackish to Grownish to 18 by 18 to all the TV we're hopefully coming out with within the next couple years, has been really thrilling.
I mean, that's real inclusion, is being able to be as specific as possible.
Yeah,
right?
and I
that's
think
such a cool moment that we're in where you're seeing it.
Right, and I feel like majority culture gets to see themselves do everything and anything, and so oftentimes our representation is so reduced to a handful of pieces of media that they have to be everything. And I feel like in order to have that level of creative freedom that we're owed as a community, of any community really, it's really about being able to allow people to tell their specific story and have enough like movies greenlit, enough TV shows on air, that there are many specific stories being played rather than the kind of go-to of like the monolith. Yeah.
It's very frustrating. Their second part of that question was actually really good. If you could live inside of a TV show or book universe for a day, what would it be?
This is exciting. So the literary nerd in me is rereading East of Eden right now by John Steinbeck. I went to an all-girls Catholic school, which I actually, like, it was one of the best experiences because I'm a history nerd and we had a crazy cool theology professor. And East of Eden is actually theoretically a parallel to the book of Genesis, which I didn't realize until my first read. So I'm rereading that, and that would be interesting. I would love to be in Atlanta because season 1, episode 7 and 8 are I reference them so specifically, but there's one episode in which they mention an invisible car and then don't make reference to it again until you see it zoom through a
the
crowd.
club scene.
Yes. And I like, it is it exemplifies creative freedom of being like, do you boo? And he's like, word, got it.
The weirdest show on TV, such a ride. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get. I love that show.
Yeah, and then I think what's been funny is I've been rewatching 30 Rock, which I think is it has so many interesting pieces of commentary that I missed on the first watch, but it's fun being in television and being in the production role and seeing Liz Lemon's journey in a whole new light, because I totally understand. We have a fabulous showrunner, Julie Bean, and I'm like, oh, this is her life. This is what she deals with. Yeah. I mean, the amount of just antics, for better or for worse, that happen on a set are kind of unfathomable, what you have to be ready for in a day.
Also, all the New York-centric stuff in there that you don't really realize until you come to New York. Like, you know, Mr. Moonvest?
Oh, yeah.
He sometimes, like, hangs out here. And every time I see him, I'm like, I want to get his autograph because he was on
so
30 Rock.
cool.
I don't.
There's an Allstate commercial recently where they reunited Liz Lemon and her boyfriend, and I was like, that's a good long-running joke.
That's a deep cut.
Like, show's been off air for years.
It's a deep cut for the real fans.
But people get it.
We do have some more audience questions. Just a couple more before we wrap up because we're running out of time.
I know. We've already gone over time, and I love it.
I know. Let's go to Maya.
Yeah.
Hi, Maya.
Hi.
So, I turned 20 last year, and I know that you're gonna be 20 very soon.
Yes.
So
Any advice?
I was gonna ask you for advice.
Oh gosh.
I was wondering if there's anything specifically about your 20s that you're looking forward to doing. Maybe you can give me some inspiration, because
I'm trying to figure that out right now. Yeah, so I'm turning 20 February 10th.
Ooh, Aquarius. Me too.
Hey,
February 18th.
There's nothing like a February Aquarius.
I'm telling you.
But I'm trying to figure that out right now, quite honestly. I've always had like viewed age as something where I'm like, I appreciate it, but I've never tied monumental moments to age. Like I remember my friends were joking that like the only reason Yara would need a fake ID is to vote before she was 18. But so that's me in a nutshell. But I think my 20s, what I've been dedicated to is one, building systems of support for myself in ways in which like I'm grateful to have people surrounding me that take care of me, but now reaffirming to myself that I'm going to take care of myself as well as the people around me take care of me. And that being a sign of growing up, meaning being really honest with myself about when I need support, because I like to be that person where I'm like, I'm fine. I haven't slept and I've been up writing for hours. I may have pulled an all-nighter then gone to set. I don't need breakfast. I'm good. And so that needs to end quickly because I'm going to be malnourished and tired next year if that doesn't change. But then overarchingly, it's been figuring out what my life goals are and not trying to, and realizing like my 20s are a perfect time to think the biggest picture possible and think the biggest dream of dreams possible because we have that time to lay the groundwork now. Like I'd love to open a music studio and that may not happen in the next 2 years and I am not personally musically gifted, but I love listening to other people make music and I'm like, why not lay the groundwork for that now, even if it's a slow dream? Yeah. Thank you.
If I can add on to that, I think that's such great advice. Like, don't get siloed into one path. I think when you're, especially in college, you're like, pick a degree and stick to it. But I think creating opportunities that you can take down the line, your second act, your third act, your fourth act is so important.
Yeah, and then the other thing has been relationship equity. This is something my mother talks about, my papa talks about, but really investing in relationships. I know oftentimes, especially entering our 20s, it's all about networking and such. And what's been proven in this industry and in every other space is that you get the farthest off of really authentic relationships. So I'm committing to being a better partner in relationships, both friendships and even business partnerships, of being like, how do I actively consider the other person and what I can contribute to their life so this surpasses the initial exchange.
Kate, did we have any more questions? I think we have one more. Oh, well, I think we can just take maybe one more. So let's go to Brianna, because we're running out of time. I'm sorry, guys. Brianna? No? Yeah? Oh, there she is.
Hey,
Hi, Brianna.
So I'm a big fan of everything you do.
Thank you.
I love your style, and I know on Netflix we got to see the behind the scenes of you prepping for the SAG Awards with Jason Bolton.
Yes.
So I was wondering, from your perspective, what it's like been working with Jason and prepping for looks. And he seems to really know like what you like. So what's that like for you?
Yeah, working with Jason is the best. Not only does he have a great team, John's in there in the back, John Mumblow, who travels with us, but it really is a team effort, and his team is fantastic at, one, getting to know who I am, and then figuring out how we translate that into every moment. And we get to think big picture, and he gets to help me explore places I never thought of, because I feel like at the end of the day, all of this should feel fun. You know, there's so much happening in our world that when you're thinking about, okay, why does fashion matter at this moment? At the very least, it should be a moment of self-expression and a moment of joy, and that's what he helps us accomplish. Because one, if it isn't fun or I can't move in it, what are we doing? Which is why I think everyone's used to me doing the robot test.
I was going to say, I've seen you do the robot.
Yeah, because if you can't do the robot, this is my conclusion. If you can't do the robot in your outfit's either too long, too short, too tight, or too loose.
Smart.
And you're not going to have a fun night if you can't move.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Yara, I could honestly... Oh, wait, we have one more question on the mark. We keep having more questions. I love this. One more, guys.
Yes.
Who do we got?
I feel like...
Yeah, when is Zoey going to stop playing and get with Aaron? That's my question. Do you have an idea of when that is? Or?
Trevor Jackson, everybody. Put your hands together.
What's up? What's up?
Homie.
But he had a valid
When is
question.
Zoey going to stop
Question.
playing?
When is she
are
gonna
you
stop
gonna
playing?
stop playing?
Stop playing games.
Your character is really trifling at times.
Yo, we always argue like we're really the people.
Oh,
like, well, if you
okay.
didn't do the thing, and we didn't.
Because you know why? I feel like Aaron wasn't a valid choice all of season 1. It started in episode 3 because he said "you up" and then showed up the next day with another girl, and that was it for me as Yara.
I mean, she played me. She played me before that. You know, it's just a tit for tat.
I didn't respond to
these days.
one text. I could have been asleep. But yeah, we really do argue about where our characters stand and who is on the moral high ground.
Well, your character is very frustrating for us as viewers. 'Cause we're like, just make it happen or don't. And we'll see. We'll see what happens, right?
Season
Trevor, we're
3.
going to keep talking about this.
Yes.
You're my next interview. We'll have a lot of questions about Aaron.
I love
Got
that
you.
dramatic reveal,
That
though.
was very
You came
dramatic.
in.
The drapes opened up and
That was really great.
Give it up for Trevor. Yara, thank you for coming and
Thank
answering all the
you.
questions. Please promise me you'll come back.
Of course. I feel like next time we just got to do like a 2-hour powwow.
Let's just block out a 2-hour block of time. Come with your
Beanbags,
questions.
snacks.
In the meantime, guys, Grownish hits Freeform on January 16th. So make sure you check it out and put your hands together for Yara Shahidi.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you. Always good.